Every coven has its beginnings, and some beginnings hatch nightmares. All right, my little night hens, fluff those feathers and lock those coop doors, because tonight we're scratching deep into the dirt where this coven first spread its wings. Welcome back to Cluck of the Coven, where the legends aren't just whispered, they crow. The woods of Brimstead Hollow had always been a place of whispered warnings. Parents told their kids not to go past the old sawmill. Hunters avoided the North Ridge after dusk, and for decades, locals claimed that the forest watched back. For 17-year-old Mira Langley, that made it the perfect place for a dare. It started on a humid Friday night, the kind of night where the air feels too thick, too still. Mira and her friends, Jake, Layla, and Ben, were supposed to be at the county fair, but after a few too many beers and a handful of reckless suggestions, they decided to do something different. Jake had heard a story from his cousin about a circle of stones deep in the hollow. Supposedly, witches once gathered there to summon their power. He'd never seen it himself, but swore if you walked far enough past the Miller's Creek and followed the sound of crows, you'd find it. Bet you won't spend 10 minutes in the circle, Jake had taunted, flashlight beam trembling with excitement. Mira rolled her eyes. What's supposed to happen? A ghost gonna hex me? Layla smirked. No, but maybe you'll hatch a nightmare. They laughed, but her words lingered. By the time they found the circle, the moon was hanging low and red through the trees. The stones formed a perfect ring, weathered by age, moss growing thick around the edges. In the center lay something unexpected, a pile of feathers. Black, shiny, and twisted together like a nest. Ben kicked one with his boot. Probably crows. Gross. Mira crouched, brushing her fingers along the feathers. They were warm. That's when she noticed something carved into the largest stone. A spiral etched with symbols that pulsed faintly in the dark. She leaned closer. The spiral wasn't drawn with ink. It was drawn in something sticky. Something that looked like dried blood. Okay, creepy enough. Let's go, Jake said, suddenly less cocky. But Mira didn't move. You said 10 minutes, she whispered, stepping into the circle. The moment her foot touched the center, the wind died. Then came the whisper. A voice, thin as smoke. One speaks. The circle listens. They thought it was the wind at first. The forest groaned and sighed as if inhaling them into its lungs. But then came the crows, dozens of them, perched silently in the branches above, watching. Probably just birds nesting. Ben muttered, though his voice cracked. Mira felt her skin prickle. The carvings around the stones seemed to move when she looked directly at them, rearranging into patterns she couldn't read. Layla found an old wooden bowl half buried near the stones, filled with dried herbs and ash. A burnt feather lay on top, stiff and blackened. Looks like someone already did their little spell, she joked nervously. But Mira wasn't listening. Something about the bowl felt familiar. She didn't know why, but it felt like a memory, not her own, was pressing against her mind. Her vision blurred. She saw flashes of robed figures in the same clearing, chanting under a harvest moon, hands dripping crimson as they drew spirals into the dirt. She stumbled back. We shouldn't be here, Jake snorted. It's a fairy tale. Relax. Then the bowl began to hum. A low vibration rippled through the ground. The feathers lifted, twirling in the air. The crows erupted into a frenzy, cawing in sync with the strange rhythm. Layla screamed, then grabbed Mira's arm. Let's go. But before they could move, the bowl split in two with a crack that echoed through the forest. From the break, a faint red mist poured out, curling upward like smoke but moving with intention. And from somewhere inside that mist came a voice that wasn't human. The first blood remembers the promise. The woods went silent again. Then, from the direction of the old sawmill, came the sound of footsteps. Slow, deliberate, getting closer. The figure that emerged from the trees wasn't a ghost. It was a woman, young, barefoot, her face smeared with soot and ash. Her dress was tattered but ancient-looking, like it belonged to another century. She carried a staff made of twisted roots, feathers hanging from its top. Mira froze. The woman's eyes were solid black. You shouldn't have broken the circle, she said, voice barely above a whisper. Layla backed away, trembling. We didn't, we were just. The woman pointed her staff toward the pile of feathers. Do you know what it means when the feathers are warm? She asked. None of them spoke. It means the last sacrifice wasn't finished. She stepped forward, her feet leaving prints that glowed faintly in the soil. One of you carries the mark. The blood remembers. Mira felt her pulse in her ears. The woman was staring directly at her. Jake raised his flashlight, but it flickered and died. Stay back. The woman didn't move. Do you want to see what you've woken? She asked softly. Before Mira could answer, the woman plunged her hand into the feather pile and pulled something out, a small, brittle bird skull, dripping with blood. Then, with a single motion, she pressed the skull against Mira's forehead. Pain flashed white-hot through her. Images flooded her mind. Women kneeling in this very circle, cutting their palms, whispering into the earth. She saw fire and a child born beneath the ash. She saw crows with human faces. Then it was gone. When she opened her eyes, the woman had vanished. Only the crows remained, circling overhead. And in the center of the circle, written in blood, were 3 words: the first ritual. They ran. Branches tore at their clothes as they stumbled back toward the car. No one spoke until they were halfway down the dirt road, gasping for breath. What the hell was that? Ben panted. Jake shook his head. We didn't see what we saw, all right? It was some kind of prank. Maybe. Prank? Mira snapped. You saw her. Yeah? And what do you want me to say? A ghost cursed us. No one had an answer. But when they reached the car, Mira noticed something horrifying. On the hood were hundreds of small, black feathers. And underneath, carved into the paint, was a spiral. That night, Mira couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she heard the crows outside her window. 1 caw, then 2, then silence. When she finally drifted off, she dreamt of the woman again, standing at the edge of her bed, whispering. The first blood must answer. Over the next few days, strange things began happening in Brimstead Hollow. Chickens on nearby farms were found dead, feathers scattered in spirals. The air reeked of iron. Jake's car wouldn't start. When he lifted the hood, he found feathers tangled in the engine belts. Ben stopped showing up to school. Mira, desperate, began researching. She spent hours in the town's library, digging through old records. That's when she found it, a diary belonging to Evelyn Grain, a young woman accused of witchcraft in the 1800s. The entries described a ritual meant to bind the living to the voices of the hollow. The last page mentioned something chilling. When the first ritual is complete, the circle will awaken once more. My blood shall return in their eyes, and my name shall not be forgotten. E.g., Mira's hands trembled. Grain. Her grandmother's maiden name was Grain. She looked down at the bruise-like mark on her wrist that had appeared after that night in the woods. It wasn't a bruise at all. It was a spiral. She was the mark. The crows outside began to caw again, louder, faster, until they sounded almost like laughter. The next night, Mira returned to the woods. She followed the crows' cries back to the circle. The stones were glowing faintly, the spiral pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat. The first ritual, she whispered. You want it finished. The wind shifted. Feathers swirled up from the ground, forming a shape, a woman's face, smiling faintly. Mira lifted her hand to the center of the circle. If this is what you want, take it. The wind roared. The spiral flared bright red, and for an instant, Mira saw the woman again, Evelyn Grain, her ancestor, standing across from her, eyes filled with tears. Forgive me, Evelyn whispered. The Coven was born from my fear, but it lives in your blood now. Then everything went white. When the light faded, the clearing was empty. No feathers, no symbols, just silence. Mira was never seen again. But a week later, the townspeople of Brimstead Hollow woke to find every barn door wide open. Inside each one, written on the walls in dark, sticky streaks, was a single phrase. The circle begins again. And outside every barn, perched in perfect stillness, were 3 black crows. And that, my brave little brood, is how the first ritual of the Coven hatched its curse. Remember, some circles should never be crossed, and some feathers aren't meant to be ruffled. If you enjoyed tonight's peek into the past, don't forget to roost over at my shop, The Haunted Hatchery, where every trinket comes with a touch of terror. Until next time, keep your beaks sharp and your lights low.